Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to read out. Having considered document AFB B38/4/add1, AFB B38/4 add2 rev1, and AFB B38/4 add3, the Adaptation Fund Board decides to A, postpone consideration of the reaccreditation application of the implementing entities which have failed to or refused to submit the top-level management statement, TLMS, which is a requirement for accreditation and reaccreditation until the 39th meeting of the board, where the board will consider this matter. B, establish a task force to provide additional input to the Secretariat on the 9 options for addressing the matter relating to the TLMS, which are outlined in document AFB B35B/4/add1, taking into account documents AFB/B38/4 add1, AFB B38/4 add2 rev1, and AFB B38/4 add3. C, elect the following as members of the task force, which will serve until the 39th meeting of the board to fulfill the task as described in paragraph B. And the task force is already finalized it. And D, to request the task force and the Secretariat to report of the work contained in subparagraph A and B to the board at its 39th meeting.
Thank you very much, Sylvia and colleagues. So since we moved to the public session, this had to be reflected on screen. Thank you very much. We consider this recommendation adopted, and now I draw your attention to agenda item 13, issues arising from 16th session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, CMP 16, the 3rd session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as a meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement, CMA 3, and the 26th session of the Conference of the Parties, COP26. And for that, I'd like to draw your attention to the related documents, and I'll invite now the Secretariat to present the relative documents. So Miko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm waiting for us to have the slides on the screen. Great, here we go. Thank you. So in the COP26 that was held in November of last year in Glasgow, a number of decisions with relevance to the Adaptation Fund Board were made. And in this presentation, I and my colleague Young will go through the main decisions and their the requests that were made to the Adaptation Fund Board that we would like to bring to your attention and to request your decision on those matters. So I would like to note that the decisions were made as part of the 16th session of the CMP, the 3rd session of the CMA, and the 26th session of the COP, relating to or referring to the Adaptation Fund and matters to be considered by the board as per decision 3 CMP 16 and decision 13 CMA 3. I would note that the information that's contained in the document that is shared by the Secretariat is not intended to prejudge the content of the document to be presented to the 39th meeting and may require further review during the intersessional period. And there are 3 documents that in which the AFB B38/10 contains the relevant decisions and matters to be considered by the board, and 2 addenda that actually should be add 1 and add 2. There's a small typo on the screen, that are the proposed amendment of the strategic policies, priorities and guidelines of the fund and the operational policies and guidelines of the fund. Next slide, please. Thank you. So turning first to decision 1 CMP 14, paragraph 6, which was of course taken a few years ago. The CMP requested the board to consider the following, to make recommendation to CMP 15 with a view to the recommendations being forwarded to the CMA 2 in November 2019. And these included the rules of procedure of the board, the arrangements of the fund with respect to the Paris Agreement, any other matters so as to ensure the fund serves the Paris Agreement smoothly, and implications of the fund receiving the share of proceeds from activities under Article 6, 12 and 17 of the Kyoto Protocol when the fund serves the Paris Agreement. The board fulfilled this mandate in 2019 by considering these matters in 3 meetings. There was an additional meeting that was added just in order to be able to process these matters, and then the board reported on its considerations and made relevant recommendations to CMP 15 in December 2019 in Madrid. Then that was done through the addendum to the report of the board to the CMP and CMA. In 2019, the board invited CMP and or CMA to take note of the board's consideration of these matters. The board also invited CMP to adopt the amendment of the terms and conditions of the trustee services to be provided by the World Bank as the interim trustee, and these were subsequently adopted by CMP 15, and that was and subsequently adopted by the World Bank as well. The board also invited the CMP to adopt amendment of the institutional arrangement with the Global Environment Facility for the Secretariat services to the board, and in Madrid, the CMP 15 also adopted these, and the GEF Council subsequently adopted them as well. The board also invited the CMP and or CMA to provide guidance and or clarification on the issue of the parties eligible for funding from the adaptation fund as referred to in paragraph 5 and 101 of the strategic priorities, policies and guidelines adopted by decision 1 CMP 4. I think there is, it cannot be paragraph 101. There must be a typo there, sorry. Let's move forward. So in the Glasgow Climate Conference last year, the decision 3 CMP 16, the CMP decided to confirm that developing country parties to the Paris Agreement that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change are eligible for funding from the Adaptation Fund, and requested the board to amend the relevant operational policies and guidelines as well as strategic priorities, policies and guidelines accordingly. The CMP also decided to confirm that parties to the Paris Agreement are eligible for membership on the Adaptation Fund board and requested the board to amend the relevant procedures and modalities. The CMP also requested the subsidiary body for implementation to continue its consideration of matters relating to membership of the board further to decision 1 CMP 14 paragraph 5 and to forward a recommendation to CMP for consideration at its next session. Regarding the fourth review of the Adaptation Fund, the CMP decided, among other things, to request the Adaptation Fund Board to make available in its report to the CMP at its 17th session and the CMA at its 4th session information on the financial status of the Adaptation Fund, including information on the share of proceeds levied on first international transfers of assigned amount units and emission reduction units for Article 6 projects of the Kyoto Protocol in accordance with Decision 1 CMP 8 paragraph 21 with a view to the fourth review of the Adaptation Fund being finalized at the same session. And I would here like to refer to the previous agenda item where the AAUs were discussed. In Glasgow, the CMA also decided to note the summary of the Adaptation Fund Board of its consideration of its rules of procedure, the implications of the Adaptation Fund receiving the share of proceeds from activities under Articles 6, 12, and 17 of the Kyoto Protocol when the Adaptation Fund serves the Paris Agreement, and any other matters so as to ensure that the Adaptation Fund serves the Paris Agreement smoothly. The CMA decided to encourage the Adaptation Fund Board to continue its consideration of its rules of procedure in the context of serving the Paris Agreement, including after the SBI has concluded its consideration of matters related to membership of the Adaptation Fund Board. Under Decision 2 CMP 16, guidance relating to the clean development mechanism, the CMP decided to authorize the transfer of $20 million from the CDM trust fund, for the trust fund for the clean development mechanism to the Adaptation Fund. And the CMP also invited the CMA to allocate the equivalent amount referred to in paragraph 18 above from the fund supporting the Article 6.4 mechanism to Adaptation Fund after Article 6.4 mechanism has become self-financing. In Decision 2 CMA 3, guidance on cooperative approaches referred to Paris Agreement Article 6, paragraph 2, the CMA invited the Adaptation Fund to report in its annual reports to the CMA on funding related to participation in cooperative approaches pursuant to paragraph 37 of Chapter 7 of the Annex, which is ambition in mitigation and adaptation actions. And that Annex paragraph 37 reads, participating parties and stakeholders using cooperative approaches are strongly encouraged to commit to contribute resources for adaptation, in particular through contributions to the Adaptation Fund, and to take into account the delivery of resources under Article 6, paragraph 4 to assist developing country parties that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change to meet cost of adaptation. Under Decision 3 CMA 3, rules, modalities, and procedure for the mechanism established by Paris Agreement Article 6, paragraph 4, the CMA requested the supervisory body to elaborate and further develop on the basis of the rules, modalities, and procedures contained in the Annex recommendations for consideration and adoption by CMA at its 4th session on B, appropriate levels for the share of proceeds for administrative expenses and its operation, including in order to enable a periodic contribution to the share of proceeds for adaptation for the Adaptation Fund. The CMA also requested the supervisory body to evaluate the implementation of the share of proceeds set out in Chapter 7 of the Annex, which is levy of share of proceeds for adaptation and administrative expenses, no later than in 2026 and every 5 years thereafter, and following such review to make recommendations on possible improvements in order to optimize the resources available to the Adaptation Fund for consideration and adoption by the CMA. Here, the Annex Rules, Modalities and Procedures, paragraph 58, at issuance, the mechanism registry administrator shall effect a first transfer of 5% of the issued Article 6.4 ERs to an account held by the Adaptation Fund in the mechanism registry for assisting developing country parties that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change to meet the costs of adaptation. And in the same annex, paragraph 66, the share of proceeds that is levied to assist developing country parties that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change to meet the costs of adaptation shall be delivered to the to the Adaptation Fund pursuant to decisions 13 CMA1 and 1 CMP 14. And here I would like to hand over to Yong for the rest of the presentation. Yong, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mikko. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you well, Yong.
Okay, so in continuation of Mikko's presentation, I'm going to present the proposed amendment of the fund's strategic priorities, policies and guidelines, and the operational policies and guidelines as per Decision 3/CMP 16, paragraph 6 and 7, and Decision 13/CMA 3, paragraph 7 and 8 for board's consideration. Moving on to the next slide, please. To start with one caveat, as you may aware, we initially prepared two options for draft board decision on this matter. One is for board to amend the, let me use the acronym here, amend the SPPG and OPG at this meeting. Option 2 is to amend SPPG and OPG at the next meeting in October. And however, due to limited time for board's discussion on this matter at this meeting, the Secretariat prepared another option, 2B, which adds to option 2, intersessional survey of the board to receive input on the amendments to the SPPG and OPG and amend them at the 39th meeting in October. I'll present the decisions at the end of the presentation. As a recap, as Mikko already presented, the CMP requested by Decision 3/CMP 16, paragraph 6 and 7, to conduct the two tasks. One is to amend the relevant OPG and SPPG regarding eligible country parties to access funding from the Adaptation Fund. And two, amend the relevant procedures and modalities regarding the decision of the parties to the Paris Agreement eligible for board membership. It is noteworthy that regarding the matters related to membership of the Adaptation Fund Board, the subsidiary body for implementation will continue its consideration of this matter and forward a recommendation to the CMP 17 later this year. So as you are aware, the fund is still in transitional period during which the fund serves both the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. Previous slide, please. Yes, thank you. During this transitional period, the fund and the board remain under the authority of the CMP, while they remain under the guidance and accountable to the CMA with respect to all matters relating to the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. Moving on to the proposed amendment of strategic priorities and policies and guidelines. Regarding the timeline, the board can amend the SPPG by 39th meeting scheduled in October this year, so that the board can timely present the amended SPPG to the CMP at 17th session for its adoption in November 2022. Now, let me draw your attention to document AFB B/B38/10/addendum 1, which contains the proposed amendment of the SPPG. And in PPT slides, proposed amendments are marked in red for your easy reference. For the sake of time, allow me to quickly go over the proposed amendments without reading the whole text. First, in background section of the SPPG, 2 new paragraphs are proposed to be added. A new paragraph 3 is proposed to be added in order to reflect decision 13/CMA1 and decision 1/CMP13 relating to the adaptation fund serving the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. Secondly, a new paragraph 4 is proposed to be added in order to reflect decision 3/CMP16, paragraph 6, and decision 13/CMA3, paragraph 7, about eligible parties to access funding from the adaptation fund. In strategic priorities section, paragraphs 5, 6, and 7 are proposed to be amended. First, paragraph 5 can be amended to reflect decision 3/CMP16, paragraph 6, and decision 13/CMA3, paragraph 7, on eligible parties to access funding from the adaptation fund. Next slide, please. Secondly, paragraph 6 is about elements that the adaptation fund funded projects and programs should consider. And paragraph 6 is hereby proposed to be amended to add adaptation planning processes, acronym of NAPAs, National Adaptation Plans, Nationally Determined Contributions, Adaptation Communications, and other voluntary adaptation reports. Next slide, please. Thirdly, paragraph 7 is proposed to add the adaptation committee, the Cancun adaptation framework, and where applicable, the least developed countries experts group as part of the source of information or reports to be considered by eligible parties in developing projects and programs. Next slide, please. In strategic policies and guidelines section, paragraph 10, 11, 15 are proposed to be amended. First, similar to paragraph 5, as addressed earlier, paragraph 10 is proposed to be amended to reflect decision 3/CMP16, paragraph 6, and decision 13/CMA paragraph 7 on eligible parties to access funding. Secondly, in paragraph 11, we propose to delete the wording, quote, or executing, quote, to make the provision in line with the fund's operational policies and guidelines, which includes definition of implementing entity and executing entity. This paragraph originally included executing entities along with implementing entity when the SPPG was developed, because back then the board was still in the process of defining implementing entity and executing entity, and later the definition was fixed in the fund's operational policies and guidelines, paragraphs 28 through 33. So under the fund, only implementing entities are entitled to implement the adaptation fund funded projects, and executing entities are organizations that execute the adaptation fund funded projects under the oversight of implementing entities as per the fund's operational policies and guidelines, paragraphs 28 through 33. Next slide, please. Last but not least, similar to the amendment of paragraph 6, paragraph 15, paragraph 6, paragraph 15A is proposed to be amended to add adaptation planning processes, national adaptation plans, and nationally determined contributions, and adaptation communications, and voluntary adaptation reports. Regarding paragraph 15B, this is proposed to add equal access to, and equitable distribution of those benefits, which is one of the primary objectives of the fund's environmental and social policy and gender policy and medium-term strategy. Next slide, please. Now let me move on to the amendment of the operational policies and guidelines. Similar to the amendment, I hear some background noise. I hope that you can hear me well. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Young. Please proceed.
Okay, so similar to the amendment of the SPPG, OPG can be amended by 39th meeting of the board in October so that the board can report it to the CMP 17 and CMA 4. Unlike the SPPG, amendment of the OPG does not require adoption by the CMP. Drawing your attention to document AFB B38/10/addendum 2, let me start with paragraph 16. So paragraph 16 of the OPG is a reflection of paragraph 7 of SPPG, and therefore the Secretariat proposed to add the Adaptation Committee, the Cancun Adaptation Framework, and where applicable, least developed countries expert group. Next slide, please. Paragraph 25 is about the eligible parties to access funding, and we can amend it to reflect Decision 3/CMP 16, paragraph 6, and Decision 13/CMA 3, paragraph 7. In paragraph 26, reference of paragraph 10 of SPPG needs to be adjusted to 12 when the board adopts the proposed amendment of the SPPG. Paragraph 54 through, apology for the typo here. It's 48 to 54, which is about the project program formulation assistance grants, which is no longer provided by the fund. And hence, we propose to delete the whole section. And if so, we will need to adjust the following paragraph numbering. Next slide, please. Paragraph 59 can be amended to reflect the fact that South-South Cooperation Grant has been replaced with Readiness Package Grant. Next slide, please. So I'd like to present the draft board decision, and again, that we'd like to present 3 options for the board's decision. And as I mentioned at the beginning, given the limited time at this meeting, and also as the board can amend the SPPG and OPG at the next meeting in October, and still can timely report and present it to the CMP 17 and CMA 4. So the Secretariat would like to recommend option 2B over other options for board's decision. But of course, that we may remain at your disposal for different views. So option 1 for the board decision, shown in the slide, having considered decisions 3/CMP 16, decision 13/CMA 3, and documents AFB B38/10 and 2 addenda, the Adaptation Fund Board decides to amend the SPPG as set out in document AFB B38/10/addendum 1. B, amend the OPG as set out in document AFB B38/10/addendum 2. C, request the Secretariat to include the following in the report of the board to the CMP at its 17th session and CMA at its 4th session. Roman number 1, the board's consideration and decision on the amended SPPG and the amended OPG as per Decision 3/CMP 16 and Decision 13/CMA 3. Roman number 2, the amended SPPG and the amended OPG. Roman number 3, the board's invitation to CMP to adopt the amended SPPG and to take note of the amended OPG at its 17th session. Next slide, please. So option 2 for the board decision is, having considered Decision 3/CMP 16, Decision 13/CMA 3, and documents AFB B38/10 and its 2 addendas, the Adaptation Fund Board decides to request the Secretariat to prepare and present a proposal to amend the SPPG and OPG respectively, reflecting the board's discussions at its 38th meeting for the board's consideration at its 39th meeting. Next slide, please. So option 2B that we propose here is the board decides to A, request the Secretariat to conduct a survey of the board during the intersessional period with a view to receiving input on the proposed amendments to the SPPG and OPG respectively, as set out in documents AFB B38/10/Addendum 1 and Addendum 2. B, request the Secretariat to prepare a document setting out the proposed amendments to the SPPG and OPG respectively, reflecting the board's discussions at the 38th meeting and the input received from the board during intersessional survey referred to in subparagraph A above for board's consideration at its 39th meeting. This concludes my presentation, and we'd like to happy to answer to any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Young and Miku, for that elaborative and important presentation on the amendments and changes that are proposed, also for presenting the board with the different options. Now I would like to open the floor for colleagues if you have any comments or questions with regards to the presentations that we have just heard. So the floor is open. I have Kevin asking for the floor. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks so much. Really appreciate the presentation and the really detailed overview of the decisions taken here. It's become very clear to me just how spread out the guidance for the Adaptation Fund is across all of the CUP, CMA, and CMP decisions, which is perhaps something for those of us in that process to think about in the future. Just 2 quick comments here. One on sort of organization. I know when the GCF addresses guidance in its internal documents, it does so using a table, which might be really helpful to sort of demonstrate which piece of text we are specifically responding to. So if there's a formatting suggestion in the future for us to very clearly demonstrate how we have responded to every piece of advice as necessary provided to us by the CMA, CMP, or the CUP. I think that would be a useful thing to do in the future. With regard to the options in front of us, I think option 2B makes sense. This is obviously an issue that I think has been really technical, and perhaps we don't have the ability or bandwidth to address immediately given the short time remaining. And I suspect folks will want to have some time to input into that process. So option 2B makes sense. And I think we'd be happy to proceed on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Mikhail.
Thanks a lot, Chair. So I'm actually kind of questioning the reasons for option 2 and 2D. It seemed like the option 1 and what was provided from the Secretary, it seems relatively straightforward, given the sort of mandate we have from the supreme bodies, the respective ones. So I think, so I guess it'll be good to get an understanding of, is there that much work that we need to do intersessionally to probably come back to the same position? So it'd be good to get a reflection if there are those views that people don't like the current proposal in option 1 from the board. It would be good to get on a registration of any concerns. A general question as well on, have we received, and I don't remember if we discussed it in the EFC meeting, the 20 million USD from the CDM as yet? But if we did, please excuse me, I do apologize about that if we did have that discussion in the EFC. The next thing is on the issuance question as well, again, and having, I guess, maybe some detailed discussions, and this is obviously linked to resource mobilization, on whether or not we need to have some sort of discussion with the CMA for the issuance of their the 6.4 emissions reductions. Do we probably need to have a further discussion on, is it that we have to actively monetize them, noting the history and the issues with the current monetization, with the CDM and the volatility of market mechanisms in general? I think it's a broader systemic discussion that I hope the board can have, because we do have issues monetizing certain CDM credits. And so we don't want to, so I think instead of potentially them being issued and accredited and put in account for the adaptation fund and then allowing the trustee to then monetize, which has its own financial implications, shouldn't we just get the SOP from when there is that sort of the transfer of funding between the two entities, which I know is a broader discussion and more political discussion on the architecture of Article 6, especially Article 6.4. But this is about the resource mobilization of the fund, because we see that the original method has millions probably in CERs that are not going to be cashed. So hopefully we can have that discussion generally. On the SPs, I do have, and thank you, Young, for the clarification on the equitable access. I had a question on that. So it's great to know that's the ESS and gender policy compliance, and I'm completely okay with that now. The only thing that I would say is that when we do include the documents that refer to adaptation sort of strategies and whatnot, I think they're the NACOMs, the NAPs, the NAPAs, and what have you. We should also consider putting in the BTRs, because the BTRs do include a section on support needed, and you can put in your adaptation support. Also, it has, even before that, a discussion on adaptation priorities. So it would be good to have a consideration by the Secretariat on if we can include that in that listing every time you have ADCOMs, also to include BTRs, because those are going to be important documents to identify what's the support needed. And then we have in the decision text. So if you can go to the decision text in option 1, I think. I don't know if you can reflect it on the screen, but in paragraph A, right. So it says here that we, the board, decide to amend the SPPG. But I guess the question is, do we have the authority? I don't think we have the authority, because then we, in C Roman numeral 3, invite the CMP to do it. So from my understanding, the SPPG comes from and emanates from the CMP. So the rightful, so I guess A would have to sort of reflect that, because we can't decide to amend it until because it's not our right or prerogative to amend it, from my understanding. But it'd be good to get Young's clarification on that legal question. The OPGs, you answered that. I was wondering why we were deleting the PFA. So that's, you can see my novice nature and then my my newness to this board, as well as looking at the replacement of South Corporation. So I guess clarification from Miko that that's now collapsed under the readiness package and that we still offer that. So those are my questions. Thanks a lot, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mikhail, for the detailed intervention. Now I'd like to hand over to Fatu.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the very elaborate presentation on these amendments. I would like to go back to, if possible, before reacting on the options, I just need some clarification if we go back to the slide on timeline for amendment of the OPG, I think there are two slides on the amendment.
Colleagues, could we kindly address the points or go back to the slides that Fatou was referring to on the timeline of the amendments?
Because it has something to do with the national communications. Okay. Yeah, this is one, this is, and then the one before that. Let me just address that. Yeah. Let's go to the one before that. Why do we have the South-South cooperation? I think this is the one with the national communications. I'm sorry for taking your time, but I think it's the one before this one or after. I'm not sure again, because the slides are not numbered. So is that one? No, where the national communication is.
Yeah, it's this one, the one before.
Right, right. In assessing the program proposals,
c'est ce diapo là,
adaptation
c'est ce
fund
diapo.
board gives particular attention. I mean, if we give particular attention to the national communications during the, I know it's important because in the national communications, there's a section for adaptation. And also there's a section for mitigations. Now the NAPAs, I don't know why because the NAPAs have been developed and handed in since 2007. So are we going back to those NAPAs or are they going to be reviewed and reassessed, or we're just submitting the old NAPAs? For the NAPs, there is no problem because I know that the NAPs are being revisited and other NAPs are being developed. But I just wanted to understand why. And that the national communications are in every 4 months, comes in every 4 months, sorry, 4 years, every 4 years. So it does not mean also that when it is in, they are being, the parts of the adaptation is being funded. But the rationale, I'm still not seeing the national communication. Is it my glasses or I can't see it?
It's there. Poverty reduction strategies, national communication, and national adaptation, and the NAPAs. It comes before the NAPAs.
It's on the 15th?
No, it comes before the NAPAs, can't you see? It's black, in black.
So maybe that's the reason it is in black. Yeah, so the rationale, I want to ask about the NAPAs and also the national communications that is done every 4 years based on full cost. So how do we deal with this? Then the other one is the South-South one. I guess it's the, I don't know whether it's the next one or the one before that. Why did we remove South-South? And the other one is execution or? Maybe go to the next one. Maybe it will help me and help all of us
Those are two documents. That's why.
Yes. South-South cooperation now is just a readiness package, and then South-South cooperation. Okay, so maybe we'll have the response to that. Whilst
South-South cooperation is on OPG, not fiscal.
I said OPG because this is proposed amendment of OPG.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatu. And maybe before going back to Miko and Young, I'll just take one intervention from Ali. Ali, floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair. Mine is short. Just quickly, I think the amendments that are proposed are rather decisions that have already been taken by CMP and CMA, and therefore I don't think it warrants to delay it further to our next meeting. So I will also go with what Kai said on the first option. But I wanted, I have some concern and with regard to the, is it this paragraph that's on there, the 15B, with regard to the equal access. I mean, this is very subjective, the new addition. I did hear the explanation given by the presenter, but if the board in the reviews of project proposals will be required to assess project proposals on the basis of equal access and equitable distribution, I wonder what criteria we will be using, because that to me looks extremely very, very subjective. On the numbers, I think, as Fado says, I suppose there were several decisions that now moved from NAPAS to NAPS. So I think so taken by events and reflecting them there is doesn't add much value. Instead, I agree with the BTRs that Mika has proposed to replace them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ali. I see Kevin's flag going up again. Kevin, floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I appreciate everyone begging my indulgence on coming back. Just a quick comment. I know I had supported deferring this to the next meeting because I think there is a little bit of tweaking and I'm not sure we have time to do all of it here. But if we do intend to do it here, I've one comment, and this actually came up, it comes up a number of times in the document, but it also came up in COP when we were discussing this issue. It's a little tricky when we say developing country parties to the Kyoto Protocol and developing country parties to the Paris Agreement, because it can imply that you have to be a party to both in order to be eligible for financing, which wasn't the intention of the decision. So I have a proposal to just amend that to developing country parties to the Kyoto Protocol and or to the Paris Agreement to make it clear that either or is acceptable. So if we could amend that in those instances, I think I'd be happy to also just do this and conclude it here in this decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your comment. Now I'll hand over to Miko and Young, and then probably take another round of interventions, if any. So without any delays, Miko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I would respond to the questions that I heard that are not related to the proposed amendments. So there was a question from Mikai about the $20 million contribution from the CDM Trust Fund to the Adaptation Fund. It has not been transferred yet, but it's in the process of being transferred. And perhaps on the other topics of the proposed amendments, I will ask Young to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Miko. If you allow me to answer to the excellent question, so I will go by questions. First, Kevin's question. Thanks for the great suggestion. And then the next year, when we prepare this document, and we will make the decisions more improve the decision, it's more easy for the board to track the mandate or tasks under the decisions. The Mikai's question, moving on to the Mikai's question. I think Miko answered on your first question, second question, and the first question about the option 2 and option 2B, what's the difference? So as I explained it, initially we prepared only option 1 and option 2. And then after yesterday, actually, because of the limited time, and as we understand that there are still several agenda items to be covered at this meeting, so we presume that the board may not have sufficient discussion on the substance of the amendments to the SPPG and OPG, and therefore that we thought that it would be helpful for the board to discuss on the substance if they have any other suggestions on the amendment to the SPPG and OPG. We could consider through the intersessional survey and then and reflect them and present the revised amendments to the SPPG and OPG to the next meeting. That's why the option 2B was created after yesterday's board meeting. Your third question about the four ERs, and unfortunately the question was we actually invited a UNFCCC colleague who is in charge of this Article 6 matter, and then this meeting agenda item was delayed, and unfortunately the colleague could not attend this meeting. And then if we can find further information from them, and hopefully we can provide more accurate information to you. On the comment on the BTRs, and then we take note, and hopefully if the board wishes to choose the option 2B, and hopefully we can receive the further inputs, and also including your input on the BTR, and we could reflect them. And regarding your question on whether the board can amend the SPPG, the board can amend the text itself. However, to allow the amended SPPG to take effect, that requires CMP's adoption. I'd like to remind you that regarding the terms and conditions for the trustee service and MOU, that was the same case in 2019. Board were able to amend the text itself. However, that for those the terms and conditions MOU to take effect, it required a CMP decision. Moving on to, I think that I answered to all the questions that Mikai asked. And the Fatu's question on the NAPAs and national communications, actually the NAPAs, we have not added newly here, but NAPAs already existed in the original SPPG. And also we just proposed to add the acronym NAPAs. And regarding the national communications, that's also the same as NAPAs. Those are already included in the original SPPG. Regarding your question on the South-South cooperation grants, so this was a decision taken by the board after recommendation from the PPRC in the past meeting. And we understand that this South-South cooperation grant was just replaced by the readiness package grants to facilitate a smoother accreditation process to address capacity gaps in a more time-efficient manner. And the readiness package grant allows for faster accreditation and addressing capacity gaps, including technicals and institutional gaps. And And the concept, the essence of South cooperation grant still exists, but we understand that this is a broader or extended readiness program, and became the name has changed as the readiness package grants, and that's what it is here. And we take note of the Ali's concern on the equal access, the added phrase, and then hopefully that if the board choose to take the option 2 and B, and hopefully we could conduct the intersessional survey to receive further inputs, and we would like to. We would be able to consider all the elements and inputs from the board. And Kevin's comment on the developing parties to Kyoto Protocol and or Paris Agreement, and that is also well noted. And hopefully, if the board takes the option 2 and B, and the Secretariat can conduct the intersessional survey, and we'd like to ask you to share your comments on the amendments to the SPPG and OPG, and we will duly consider all those input. Hope that we clarified all the questions. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Young, and thank you, colleagues, for that interesting discussion. I believe that option 2B seems to be the most realistic one at the moment, and understanding the time constraint that we have, and also we're not able to cover many elements on the agenda. So I think option 2B still gives the board the opportunity to participate intersessionally and add their own perspectives and views. So if the board is okay to proceed with the option 2B, I believe we can move to the next agenda item, but I'll of course open the floor if colleagues have any objection to proceeding with option 2B. Matthias, I see you're asking for the floor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm willing to go along with 2B, although I would also be happy with option 1, and we get it done and dedicate our time in the fall meeting to other matters. So yeah, making perhaps the reference to the BTR. I'm not sure where exactly you want to place that, and maybe Kevin's suggestion, and then we could proceed. But that of course depends on colleagues in the room if they're happy with that or not. I'm flexible, but for me it would be possible to go forward. I have another question, more like looking forward, just a little bit trying to anticipate, what's next, even looking ahead, in terms of these changes in the accountability lines to Paris and Kyoto, and notably, what does the Secretariat expect in terms of need to adjust for legal reasons, regarding also Secretariat services, trustee arrangement, AF board arrangement, etc. For the moment when these shall proceeds under 6.4 flow, and the fund is exclusively on the Paris, so that we ensure that we don't run into any legal problems on the functionality of the fund. So just to get a sense, what do we have to expect in that regard coming forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias, for points and concerns. That's very well noted. I'm wondering if Miko and Young would want to have any follow-ups to Matthias' point. Miko, floor is yours.
Thank you. I would actually hand this to Young. Young, please go ahead.
Sure, Miko. Thank you for very important question, Matthias. We have considered this matter in 2019, and then during the 3 board meetings also we repetitively emphasize the important, the timely preparations for the institutional arrangements for the trustee and especially the secretariat services for in case before the fund starts exclusively serving the Paris Agreement, and that time there were uncertainties on also that Article 6 decisions were not made in 2019, so it was not possible to prepare on concrete arrangements for those institutional arrangements for the trustee and secretariat services. However, rest assured that this year we have already, the secretariat started consultation with the trustee and the UNFCCC secretariat team for preparation for the transition to the Paris Agreement, and at this moment, what the consultation confirmed that, for example, the Article 6.4, the CRs will not be available this year, and because that it still requires a CMA decision on the guidance, and therefore that it would be we continue the consultation with the UNFCCC Secretariat team and trustee. We started already the consultation on the trustee arrangements, and we will duly report the board on any updates on this matter. Hope that it clarifies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Young, and thank you, colleagues, for that discussion. So I believe that we're left with option 2B, and I think that this is a more or less a realistic option, and also after listening to the explanation by the Secretariat. So is there any objection to proceed with option 2B? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much. Let's now move to an agenda item that was also put ahead of you for yesterday's meeting, which was the only pending item from yesterday on the draft resource mobilization strategy and action plan for the period 2022-2025. And for this, we will have Miku give us a presentation, and the plan is to have the comments and the points being addressed intercessionally rather than to open a discussion here at the board, understanding the time constraint and limitation we have. So Miku, the floor is yours on agenda item 11.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, given the late hour and in the interest of being able to finalize the decisions, the Secretariat would like to propose a revised decision that we are going to put on the screen here. And it seems that, yes, here we go. So the draft resource mobilization strategy and draft resource mobilization action plan that the Secretariat has prepared under the guidance of the Resource Mobilization Task Force are included in the board documents, and due to the lack of time during this meeting, the Secretariat would propose to request comments from members and alternates during the intersessional period, and to take this matter up in the next board meeting. So the decision reads as follows. Having considered document AFB 38/6 and its Annex 1, and AFB B36.6 Addendum 1 and its Annex 1, and Addendum 2 of the same document. The Adaptation Fund Board decides to request the Secretariat to conduct a survey among the board with a view to receiving input on the draft resource mobilization strategy contained in document AFB B38/6 Addendum 1 and draft resource mobilization action plan contained in document AFB B38/6 Addendum 2 during the intersessional period. And B, request the Secretariat to revise the draft resource mobilization strategy and action plan by reflecting the input provided by the board during the intersessional survey as referred to in subparagraph A, and to present them to the board for consideration at the 39th meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Miku, and thanks for presenting us the revised recommendation. And maybe it would be ideal to scroll down in order for colleagues to see the full decision. So could we kindly scroll down on the screen? So colleagues, the floor is open if there are any quick comments or reactions. Otherwise, then we would have this recommendation being approved, and that will give the board members the opportunity also to come back with comments intersessionally. Okay, so hearing no objection, the revised recommendation is approved, and now we will move to, and apologies, maybe we'll also have to give you a quick update about the agenda. And as you know, and as you can see, we're we're way ahead of time on the initial schedule. We were supposed to close today by 5:30. It's already 5:20. We need to also allow time for the Secretariat to finalize the decision text. So we will have to postpone some agenda items for the next board meeting, and that would be agenda item 12A on the linkages with the potential linkages with the Green Climate Fund, also on 12B, further enhancing civil society participation, and also agenda item 14 on the knowledge management, communication and outreach. I understand that those are important agenda items, but unfortunately, due to the time constraint, we will not be able to look at those agenda items now, but we will definitely make sure that they're reflected in the next board meeting. And for the time being, I believe I will move straight to other matters. I believe at the beginning of the meeting, we have opened the floor for board members to raise any comments or any items that they want to place on the other matters agenda. And I believe my colleague from Maldives, Ahmed Wahid, had already indicated that he has an item that he would want to have a discussion around on other matters, and that has to do with the date and venue of meetings in 2022 and onward. I have also received a text from Mr. Ahmed Wahid highlighting that it's time for iftar in Maldives and celebrating the holy month of Ramadan. He will not be able to be part of the discussion, but he wanted me though to come in on his behalf and highlight that matter that he raised in the beginning of the meeting with regards to the dates and venue of meetings in 2022 and onward. And I believe that it's important for us and the board also to keep in mind how important it is for the board to actually be conducting meetings in developing countries where projects are happening, where the recipient countries and also at other parts in the developing world. We believe that this is important for many different factors, including being closer to countries where we are actually allocating resources, being able to reach different stakeholders, being able to increase the visibility also of the fund, and also to have countries in the developing world capitalize on the resources and the available funding from the adaptation fund. So we thought that it would be important for us to start exploring this. I understand that the board meets twice in Bonn, but definitely this is something for the board to consider, to be open to conducting board meetings in developing countries. I think that this is not a new practice. It's the practice in many different MDBs, and also including the Green Climate Fund, which is a fund that's also serving the Paris Agreement. So I'll leave this, of course, for comments and interventions by colleagues, but also maybe one more point to highlight. I don't think that this also should be limited only to board meetings. I believe it's important for us to also explore ideas for conducting capacity building, outreach, workshops in developing countries to make sure that also we reach a maximum audience and we capitalize on the available resources to have more developing countries benefiting from the adaptation fund, to be closer to the projects where the fund is actually implementing and benefiting those countries, among many other reasons. But I'll leave the floor open for you colleagues if you have any comments or any points on that regard. So the floor is open. And apologies, I had to give the intervention on behalf of my colleague from Maldives, but I just tried to capture the essence of our idea of having the board meetings being conducted in developing countries, and also exploring the idea of conducting workshops and meetings in developing countries that would help both the fund and also developing countries who are accessing the resources of the fund. So the floor is open if there are any comments. I believe, Kevin, you had your flag up first, so floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much, Chair. No, really appreciate this proposal from our colleague from the Maldives, and I think it's an interesting idea. I know that this is common practice at the GCF, for example, to have one board meeting per year held outside of Songdo, which is interesting and it's useful. It's nice to go to developing countries and get a better sense of where projects are being implemented. So there's certainly a utility to this. A couple of additional experiences for consideration. One, I'm not sure if it's relevant that the Adaptation Fund only has 2 board meetings a year. On balance, 1 out of 3 away feels right. 1 out of 2 away seems maybe a bit much. But I think that's open for consideration. I know the GCF has also experienced issues when projects up for approval have been under discussion while a meeting was being hosted in that country, which led to conflicts of interest. So I think that would be something we would need to consider. And last but not least, I think that there's also some additional implications of a decision like this that I think we would want to consider, not only from a financial perspective of how much more or less this would cost the fund in order to do, but also whether or not we're legally able to do this. I understand that there is some sort of strange provision, which means the Adaptation Fund is legally required to take decisions here in Bonn. And if that remains the case, then I actually don't see how we could do this outside of Bonn. So I think in principle, supportive. I think it's a nice idea, and I think it could potentially be useful and interesting, but it seems to me that there are more considerations that need to be taken into account, including a legal question, which may prove to be insurmountable depending on how that is structured. Thankfully, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure. But I wonder if this requires some additional discussion before we can take a decision here. And maybe this is something we can take up in a bit more detail at the next meeting once the Secretariat has helped us consider options and what the implications of those would be legally, financially, and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Patience.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to thank Ali for his suggestion. And I was also just going to raise the issue that I know that it's the legal personality issue in terms of the board. So maybe Miko and Young may even be able to explain that further, because I understand that the board meets in Bonn or where the COP is taking place. But I suppose, I don't know whether if a developing country wants to host it, whether then the country has to make some legal, whatever implications. I'm not too sure. So I think I'll leave that to Miko and Yang to explain that. But otherwise, in principle, I think it's in order at least to also go to a developing country to be able to see what is going on there, etc. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Patience. I have Maya and then Fatu. Maya, floor is yours.
Thank you. Regarding the board meetings outside the bond, so probably we can discuss about the legal issues. But other than the board meetings, I believe that the outreach activities will be really beneficial for the adaptation fund, and especially for the designated entities, because what we observe is there is a lack of information still, and they would definitely benefit from receiving the, I don't know, time by time additional information about the opportunities what lie in the adaptation fund. And it's not necessarily should be done like with adaptation fund only, but maybe if we go back to the linkages, so we didn't discuss, it can be an option, for example, to have the meetings together with the Green Helmet Fund and Adaptation Fund. And it will be good for the linkages with the two mechanisms, but also for the outreaching of the potential areas as well. So I would support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya, for that proposal and support as well. Fatu.
Thank you, Chair, for communicating Mohammed's request. Yes, it's a very good idea. And I think it is also important. I mean, if the Adaptation Fund Board could see what is on the ground and have a feel of what is happening at that in those areas. Yes, at least from my experience, I know that the problem of immunity, that is what is required. But this, I am sure Mr. Miko, who is here, is in a position to have the logistics in place, because it has been done elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatu. I have Margarita and then Matías. Margarita, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Voy a hablar en español. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Me parece muy interesante la posibilidad de que las reuniones se realicen en países en desarrollo, en donde se llevan a cabo proyectos financiados por el Fondo de Adaptación. Creo que esto daría una perspectiva interesante e importante a la Junta. Pero me queda la duda de si esto incluiría una visita a los proyectos y si esto requeriría de días adicionales. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Margarita, and thanks for your also follow-up question. I have two more requests for the floor. I have, I'll start with Matías and then Eddie. Matías, the floor is yours.
Just to lend my full support to this suggestion, Chair, I think what Fatu says makes a lot of sense as well. We need to have as well. I mean, it's useful for us to have this proximity to the realities of the partner countries of the AF and hear directly as well from stakeholders. So in that sense, if those meetings can be combined with project visit, that would make a lot of sense. I'm not that sure if having the meetings back to back with the GCF is for practical reason something that we could consider. Also for those, I think, colleagues that serve on both boards, it would be an overkill in terms of preparation as well. So while it sounds good, Maya, I'm not sure if that's a very practical suggestion, I'm afraid. But for the rest, yes, and let's try to solve potential legal and other matters that are related to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And it's like you read my mind. I sit on both boards, and it would be almost impossible to have to sit for 10 days in one chair and negotiate all those policies. It would be impossible. Eddie, the floor is yours.
Yeah, very shortly. Je pense très brièvement, comme l'ont dit mes collègues, je pense que c'est une possibilité qu'on peut envisager si le pays qui est destiné pour accueillir cet événement a les moyens logistiques. Parce que je pense que la logistique que nous avons ici à Bonn, c'est quand même assez très bien huilé et que les gens ont l'habitude d'organiser ce genre d'événements. Et que le plus important, c'est maintenant de voir, comme on l'a dit, d'accoupler ça à des visites, par exemple, de projets qu'on a déjà financés au niveau du fonds d'adaptation, même si c'est pour voir qu'est-ce qui a été fait très longtemps après, si le projet continue à marcher, quels sont les bénéfices que les populations locales ont pu tirer de ces projets-là. Donc, c'est quelque chose qui serait très intéressant. Mais le plus important, c'est voir l'aspect logistique qu'on va trouver sur place et voir quelles sont les capacités. Et que si, au niveau du fonds, je veux dire, les moyens de délocaliser une telle activité sont disponibles, moi, je ne vois pas d'inconvénient. Voilà.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and also for raising those valid points. Maya, apologies, I believe you wanted to come back to comment, and I oversaw your flag, so floor is yours.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Matthias. I didn't mean the back-to-back board meetings. I was just talking about the outreach meetings with the NDAs and NDEs where they can meet. So the board, we understand that it's not possible probably to have like 2 weeks meeting. Thank you.
Okay, that's a lot better, Maya. Thank you very much, and fully agreed. I think definitely the GCF has been very active in conducting a lot of regional dialogues, regional outreaches, and they've been very active on that front. So definitely it's a possibility for us to consider having some sort of back-to-back meeting with some of the GCF outreach events that are taking place in developing countries. I'm not sure that we have done any in the past 2 years, and I understand, like many others, because of COVID and the pandemic. But now, as things hopefully evolve in a better way and situation clears for conducting international events, I'm sure that this is definitely a possibility and something to look into. So, colleagues, thank you very much. I believe that this was an important discussion, and I think it was clearly stated by many colleagues that, I mean, there is that obstacle, there are challenges of the legal component when it comes to the P&Is and being able to take decisions only in Bonn and in countries where the COP is happening, but also there is, I believe, a strong support that was clearly highlighted by everyone for exploring that possibility and that option. I will turn over maybe to Miku and Young, because I think there were some legal questions that were posed to you. But just a moment, colleagues. Thank you very much, Miku, for highlighting to me that colleagues also at who are joining virtually are asking for the floor. I believe that we have Mr. Ali Waqas from Pakistan. So Ali, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving me floor. I just want to support and extend my support to what Ahmed has proposed to all of us, that the board meetings, in my understanding, should be held in developing countries as well, given there is a legal possibility to hold such meetings, because for me, it is very important to see what decisions we take here in the board, what effects they have on grounds. If we can couple the board meetings with some project visit after the meeting, then this can give us surely a different perspective about our decisions which we take here. Secondly, I have a question about the legality of holding meetings outside Bonn. We have yet to listen the perspective of the Secretariat that whether it is legally possible to have the meeting outside Bonn or not. But then what is, if that is not possible legally, then what is the status of the online meetings we held for last 2 years and this hybrid meeting where I'm sitting in Pakistan and I'm not in Bonn? Then what is the status of this meeting? That if it is possible, then it's my understanding that the holding a meeting in developing countries is very much possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ali, and thanks for raising that point as well. So, seeing no further requests for the floor, maybe I'll hand over to Miku, but maybe just comments from my perspective as well. I believe that it's definitely an interesting idea to explore. I believe that also hearing some of the comments earlier, I also heard that it's possible for the board to meet in Bonn or where the COP is being hosted. I understand that this year the COP will be hosted in Egypt, and of course, Egypt is a country that we have a lot of projects we work very closely with. So maybe in your remarks, Miko or Young, you could touch upon the possibility of exploring Egypt as an option for conducting the board meeting as well. With that, I'll hand over back to you, Miko, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I will start to respond and then hand over to Young for further information. The location of the meetings of the board is provided in the rules of procedure of the Adaptation Fund Board, paragraph 18, that states that the board shall meet at least twice every year or as frequently as necessary to enable to discharge its responsibilities. The meetings of the board shall take place in the country of the seat of the UNFCCC Secretariat, except when meeting in conjunction with sessions of the CMP or with the sessions of subsidiary bodies under the UNFCCC, in which case the board meeting may take place in the country or at the venue of the relevant UNFCCC meeting. So this is the legal limitation at the moment for board meetings. The board has met outside of Bonn twice, in 2010 in Cancun, in conjunction with a COP, and in 2011, I believe, in Durban, also in conjunction with a COP. So that has been in line with the rules of procedure. The Secretariat has not recently reviewed the legal implications of what it would mean to organize the meeting in conjunction with the COP. We understand it may be quite substantial undertaking that requires essentially and especially addressing the privileges and immunities of the board that would need to be provided by the hosting government of the meeting, and that is something that we haven't looked at recently, but we would be happy to do that and clarify it to the board in the near future. With regard to Ali Waka's question on the status of the online meetings, the online meetings were supposed to, were considered to take place virtually, but in Bonn. So the meeting reports have the location of Bonn as the formal location of the meeting, even if they took place online. I would hand over to Young for further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikko. If you allow me to provide additional information, as Mikko correctly indicated, the rules of procedure paragraph 18 sets out the locations or venues for the board meeting. So we understand that in the past, the board meeting had been held in the COP host countries twice. And for that situation, in case that the board meeting is held in the COP host country, it still is in line with the rules of procedure. However, if the board wishes to hold a board meeting outside of Germany, where the seats of the UNFCCC Secretariat is located, or the COP host country, in that case, there is a risk of conflicting or is going against the rules of procedure, paragraph 18. And therefore, if the board wishes to hold a board meeting outside of the locations which are indicated in paragraph 18, this would require the amendment of the rules of procedure, paragraph 18. And as a reminder, the rules of procedure amendment requires the adoption of the CMP. And that's something that the board may want to consider. Under the German Act, members and alternate members of the Adaptation Fund Board enjoy, according to the German Act, immunity from legal process in respect of words spoken or written and all acts performed by them in their official capacity. And such immunity continues to be accorded also after termination of their business. So in case the board meeting is to be held in the countries other than Germany or the COP host countries, the legal arrangement to guarantee the board's immunity needs to be entered with the potential board meeting host country. And as the Adaptation Fund doesn't have the precedent before, the Secretariat would need to also, would benefit from consulting with the UNFCCC colleagues. And then if the board wishes to explore this option, keeping in mind that rules of procedure amendment is required to hold a meeting outside of Germany and the host COP host country, and we would be happy to further analyze the legal and administrative implications of hosting the board meeting in developing country, which is not the COP host country. So allow us to further explore the options, including the consultation with UNFCCC, and we would be happy to provide further information afterwards. Thank you. Let me stop there. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Young, for that clear explanation, and also to you, Mikko. I already see Fatu asking to come back. Fatu, floor is yours.
Sorry, Chair, for coming back. After Young's explanation, I would like to find out whether the Adaptation Fund Board could have a meeting in where the World Bank is, because the World Bank is the one who is mandated for the secretariat of this. Is that a possibility to consider?
Okay, thank you very much, Fatu. I also have Aram asking for the floor. Aram, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to briefly recall a similar discussion several years ago
Well, except what I remember, that except of the legal problems with meeting outside of Bonn of COP hosting city, I remember that the previous manager of the secretariat mentioned that for logistical issues, they have had normally a lot of problem is it is outside of Bonn. It's also including not venue, but also DSA transfer or whatever, because before the DSA was transferred in cash. But I remember that previous manager of the secretariat mentioned that if the board has a member and alternate in that country, I mean, outside of Bonn, I mean, the COP hosting country, it was much easier for them to organize because of for local knowledge of local logistical issues. But if no board or member in that country, that was really tough for the secretariat. But I also would like to remind that secretariat at this time was really small, not relatively small right now. Maybe the situation now may have changed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aram, for that point. It's very well noted. Colleagues, I think that this was a really interesting discussion. We have, I believe, I'll give the floor to Miko maybe to answer the question that was posed by Fatu as well. But also, all in all, I think in Young's explanation and also response to the comments and interventions we heard, she also highlighted that it would be ideal to give the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat also the time to consult with UNFCCC colleagues to see what is the best way to proceed and what are the legal arrangements that can be made. So I believe that this is something that we can definitely ask the Secretariat to do before the next board meeting in October. But also similarly, we have heard that it is possible to have the board meeting be conducted in a country where the COP is being hosted. And I believe Egypt is a developing country again, but we do have some projects with, and it's a possibility, and would also ask the Secretariat to explore that possibility and for this year and for upcoming years as well, because I think that there is quite enough interest by board members to explore that further. Of course, bearing in mind all the caveats and all the points that were put forward when it comes to, for example, having the meeting of the GCF in a country where the project is being conducted and how it poses conflict of interest, also about the legal arrangements for decision-making, that it would only be allowed in Bonn, among others. But I believe that those are all things that can be definitely manageable and work through legal arrangements. And I don't see that something being impossible, and I think it's something doable. So without any further comments and interventions on this, I'll hand over back to Miko. And I hope we can move forward understanding the time limitations we have. Miko, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Just responding very briefly to Fatu and Aram, to Fatu's question, under the current rules of procedure, organizing the meeting in the United States would not be possible, but it would be, if the rules of procedure were to be changed, then then we would need to explore the analysis of provision of the privileges and immunities for the board to meet there. Or of course, if the COP takes place in the US, then that would be possible as well. To Aram's question, I would say that you are completely correct. So nothing really to add. Those are challenges. The Secretariat is also now bigger, even though still relatively small. So thank you for the comment. And maybe just to, if I may also to respond to you, Chair, that the Secretariat would be happy to explore these opportunities as you have outlined. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miko, and thank you, colleagues, for that very interesting discussion and dialogue. So now we close the agenda item on other matters, and I would like to draw the board's attention to agenda item 16 on date and venue of meetings in 2022 and onwards. And here I would invite Miko to present the dates and venue of the board meetings in 2022. So Miko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if yes, here we go. So apologies, just a moment. Okay, so the board has in fact already decided that the meeting, the 39th meeting of the board would take place in the week of October 10th to 14th of October of this year. So there's an existing decision on that from last year. Then on about next year, there are possible options for the 40th meeting on either on the week of March 14 or the week of March 21st, and for the 41st meeting, the week of either the week of October 10th or October 17th. And we have pending the continuation of the discussion and exploration of possibility of holding the meeting elsewhere. We have confirmed that the current venue would be available during those weeks, and they also don't seem to conflict with any major holiday or other event that we would be aware of at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miko. Colleagues, would you have any comments or interventions with regards to the date and venue of the upcoming meetings? Mikhail, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick thing on the, I guess, how does it fare out with other climate finance meetings? And another practice that we did have in GCF is like it had a table of all the other sort of big meetings, the JEF, GCF and whatnot. Just want to make sure that they're not clashing. But if you can guarantee us, Mika, that it's not clashing with the JEF and the GCF and the SCF, I guess is another one probably to look out for. That might be quite helpful, or any other climate meetings. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. Colleagues, any other requests for the floor? Okay, Miko, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we haven't checked with the meetings of the other bodies, although typically the JEF council meetings would not take place during these months, and the GCF board meeting, I'm not sure if that information is available. It seems not available yet. About the Standing Committee on Finance, we have not checked, but I wonder if that information is available. Perhaps not. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miko. And also, if I may add from my side, I believe we've had also a rich discussion about the possibility of looking into board meetings being conducted elsewhere. So maybe that can be something that we would trust the Secretariat to come back with us with possible options of conducting the upcoming board meetings in other locations, bearing in mind all the legal arrangements and whatever conclusion you come up with from your discussion with the UNFCCC. So that might be also something to be reflected here and that decision as well. And also to Mikai's point, I believe it's very important, and now we've been having many different meetings that are taking place simultaneously. I personally was attending to 3 or 4 different meetings between myself physically in Cape Town and Dubai, and then attending to the Green Climate Fund, our group meeting, and many other meetings that are taking place at the same time. And I was complaining to colleagues about the multiple meetings that take place. So it would be important for us to double check. To my knowledge, normally the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat does a great job of really avoiding conflict with other meetings. I've been on the board for quite some time and barely had any conflict, but it would be great to double check. And also, Miko, if we could include that possibility of exploring other options and venues based on the discussion we had. So any other comments, colleagues, or maybe we can move to the next agenda item. Okay, hearing none. So now I'd like to thank you very much, Miko and Young, for responding to our comments and questions on this matter. Now I'd like to invite the board to agenda item 17, implementation of the Code of Conduct. And for that, I'd like to draw the attention of the board to the Code of Conduct and Zero Tolerance Policy for Corruption posted on the website. And also, I'd like to ask the board if there are any issues to raise under this agenda item. And also, if there are any points that you would want to raise under this agenda item. So the floor is open. So colleagues, I did not see any request for the floor. What we have to do now is to wait for 15-20 minutes for the Secretariat to finalize the decision text. And I would really beg your indulgence to be around because we would need the quorum to approve the decision text. So we'll reconvene in 15 to 20 minutes maximum. Thank you very much, colleagues. Colleagues, thank you very much for your patience and for being with us towards the final part of today's meeting. If I can kindly invite board members to take their seat and help us finalize the decision text for the 38th meeting of the Adaptation Fund Board. And we'll go straight to the decision text. What you have before you is agenda item 2 on the board membership and election of outstanding officers. I will not be reading throughout the decision because you're very familiar with those decisions as we have taken them, but out of formality, we have to reflect them on the screen. Please feel free to stop or interrupt whenever you need. Now we're looking at agenda item 2, board membership and election of outstanding officers, including chair of the board, vice chair, and also the committee representatives. So I believe the names are reflected on the screen. Could we kindly scroll down? Okay, the next agenda item, please. And of course, congratulations to all new appointed members. Look forward to working with all of you. Agenda item 7, report of the accreditation panel. The next one, please. And here, I believe you have the names of the task force that was elected for the accreditation panel. For the TLMS to be more accurate. The next one, please. So the PPRC recommendations as well as EFC recommendations were discussed and looked at in the room and were approved. So we will skip this one except for maybe one part of the EFC. And if we can have that part being highlighted on the screen. So maybe the part with, in relation to the budget. Thank you. Next one, please. And here, agenda item 10 on the midterm strategy of the fund for the period 2023 to 2027. Marc-Antoine, you're asking for the floor. The floor is yours.
Merci. Thank you, President. Mon nom est Martin, pas Martina. Et deuxièmement, je reviens en amont du document sur le budget. Est-ce que dans la nouvelle formulation a bien été intégrée la proposition qui avait été approuvée de 2 autres personnes, un junior et un consultant pour 280 000 €, je crois. Est-ce que ceci a bien été mis dans le compte-rendu? Je ne suis pas sûr de l'avoir vu. Je parle de l'item qui était, vous avez défilé rapidement, mais c'est avant, sur le budget.
Apologies, first of all, Marc-Antoine, for the name mistake. We'll make sure that this is reflected correctly, and apologies also for going fast. Please, colleagues, feel free to interrupt me whenever you want. And now let's look at the decision with
Est-ce qu'on a
regards
bien
to the
pris en
budget.
compte les propositions de budget supplémentaires qui ont été évoquées pour le PPRC, entre autres, tel que ça a été dit par Nico? Je ne sais plus quel est le montant, c'est autour de 280 ou 300 000 euros, dollars, pardon.
Sure. Thank you very much for your question, Marc-Antoine. Now let me turn over to Miko, maybe to further elaborate on your concern, which I believe is reflected in the decision as well. Miko, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marc-Antoine, for the question. The details of the budget, including the two additional positions, they are included in the document, in the budget document that was reissued as a revision 1 document. And then this, I believe the preamble of this decision refers to the Rev 1, which specifies that those positions are included in it. And the figures here are in line according to that revised document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miko. So, Marc-Antoine, does that answer your comment, or can we proceed?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marc-Antoine. So, colleagues, yep. So I believe we've already looked at the midterm strategy. Could we move to the next one, please? Here, colleagues, agenda item 11 on the draft resource mobilization and action plan for the period 2022 to 2024. Next one, please. Agenda item 12 on the issues arising from CMP, CMA, and COP. Next one, please. Here you have the date and venue of meetings in 2022 and onward. Aram.
Thank you, Chair. If I'm not mistaken, when we discussed the option for this year from 18 to 21 October, I think was deleted.
18 to. Sorry, Aram, could you come back on that?
I mean, when we were discussing the date of upcoming board meetings, the option for fall 2022, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we just left one from 11 to 14, not additional option from 18 to 21.
That is correct, Aram. Thank you very much for highlighting that. Colleagues, if we can have that reflected on the screen. Marc-Antoine is also asking for the floor. Marc-Antoine, the floor is yours.
Well, it is the same.
Okay, merci. So the next one, please.
Yeah.
Okay, the changes are reflected on the screen. Next one, please. Well, colleagues, this takes us to the end of the decision text. At the end, I just want to sincerely thank each and every one of you. I would want to thank the Secretariat for the excellent work that was conducted and making sure that this board meeting runs smooth in a smooth way. So thank you very much for all the work that you have done. This has certainly helped us at the board to proceed quite well on the agenda that we had. So I would want to thank colleagues who are sitting around the table and colleagues who have joined us virtually. Thank you very much for your input and enriching the discussion at the board meeting. Thanks to the interpreters and to the technical and IT support team, and also the speechwriters. Thanks a lot to all. Maybe before I finalize, are there any asks for the floor from colleagues who are joining virtually? Okay, well, Marc-Antoine, are you asking for the floor?
Non, 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 je n'ai, no, thank you, merci, je n'ai pas demandé la parole. Merci pour vous, Président, et à tous nos collègues. À bientôt, j'espère.
Thank you very much, Marc-Antoine. So colleagues, I don't want to give long closing remarks. I know it's been very busy 2 days. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you, and look forward to seeing you at the 39th board meeting. Safe travels, and wish you all the best. And I think we deserve a round of applause for everyone here.